The weight of the stars. It was supposed to be an ordinary Friday afternoon in Hope Mills, North Carolina. A quiet town nestled just outside Fayetteville. The kind of place where gas stations double as gossip centers and everyone knows someone who's served. The kind of place where you think nothing extraordinary ever really happens until it does. Caleb Dawson wasn't looking for trouble. He never was. At 63, the Major General had served under 4 presidents, led coordinated missions in Iraq and Afghanistan, and been honored in 3 separate NATO briefings. But today, dressed in nothing more than a plain gray polo, jeans, and a baseball cap from his alma mater Tuskegee University, looked like any other tired man stopping for gas after a long day. The stars on his shoulders weren't visible, but they were there. Always had been. Not the kind you wear, but the kind that settle into your spine from decades of command, of responsibility, of never flinching even when the world spun sideways. Caleb had just finished speaking with a group of veterans of the Fayetteville VA, centermen and women with tired eyes and slow gaits. Some who remembered him from deployments, others who only knew his name whispered through the hallways like a legend. He hadn't gone there for accolades. He went to listen. That was his way. Now he was headed back to Fort Liberty, formerly Bragg, when he decided to stop at a Shell station on Camden Road to fuel up his Dodge Charger. It was a quick stop. Routine. Or so he thought. The sun hung low behind the clouds, casting a dull amber light over the asphalt. Caleb stepped out of his car at Pump 3, his back stiff from old field injuries. He moved slowly but deliberately, every gesture calculated not out of fear, but out of habit. He was halfway through pumping gas when he noticed a patrol car pulling in from the far corner of the lot. It angled sharply and came to a jarring stop just a few feet away. The door swung open, and out stepped a young officer, late 20s, maybe early 30s. Crew cut, aviators on, despite the dying light. His stance screamed something not authority, but the need for it. Step away from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them. Caleb turned, startled but composed. Officer, is something wrong? No reply. The officer circled his vehicle, hand resting on his firearm. You match the description of suspect involved in a robbery 10 minutes ago. Caleb's brows furrowed. I just left the VA center. I can show you my. Step away from the car now. People were beginning to watch. A woman juggling a toddler in a juice box froze mid-stride. A man leaning against his truck across the lot narrowed his eyes. Phones were already being discreetly pulled from pockets. I'm Major General Caleb Dawson, United States Army. I'm not armed. I would like to show you my military ID. I don't care who you are. Hands visible. There was not misunderstanding. Decision. I'm not resisting. I'd like to cooperate. Turn around. Hands on the hood. Caleb could feel the stares, the tension. He felt the sting of the cuffs before he heard the ratcheting click. He didn't flinch, didn't plead. He'd stood before combat tribunals, briefed NATO commanders, buried comrades in silence. This wasn't fear. This was shame. But not for him. A voice called out, "That's General Dawson." Another, "Are you serious right now?" But the officer, whose nameplate read Officer Lucas Brandt, didn't even glance up. Back away. Do not interfere with police operations. Caleb said nothing. He wasn't afraid of being hurt. He was afraid of what it meant for the people watching, for the children in the cars, for the uniform he still wore in spirit. And then everything shifted. A maroon pickup truck pulled into the station. Deputy Nathaniel Nate Boone had just dropped his son off at STEM camp. He wanted a soda, maybe some peace. Instead, he stepped out of his truck and heard the unmistakable tension of authority being abused. He saw the crowd, saw the phones, and then he saw Caleb. His stomach dropped. He had served under Dawson in Baghdad years ago, during some of the darkest days of the surge. Dawson didn't bark orders. He stabilized them with strategy, not fear. Nate remembered a sandstorm so thick they couldn't see their own boots. Dawson had walked a quarter-mile through open terrain to check on wounded men. He remembered that voice. He'd never forgotten it. He stepped forward, instinctual, hand resting near his badge. "What's going on here?" Officer Brandt turned. "Step back, sir. This is a police matter." Boone flipped his badge. Deputy Nate Boone, Cumberland County Sheriff's Department. That man is General Caleb Dawson. Have you checked his ID? He refused to comply. I said, did you check his ID? He matched the description. I didn't ask if he matched, Boone said, stepping in. Did you confirm who he was? Brant hesitated. Boone was done being polite. You are detaining a decorated U.S. Army general on private property, without cause, while witnesses are filming and he's clearly offering identification. Uncuff him. Now. Brant shifted. The posture collapsed under pressure. Boone reached for the keys on the officer's belt and removed the cuffs himself. Caleb flexed his wrists, silently nodding his thanks. You gonna report this? Boone asked softly. Caleb shook his head. I'm not that kind of man. Well, I am. Boone pulled out his phone and called the watch commander. You need to send a supervisor to the Shell on Camden. Now. Within 20 minutes, Lieutenant Jessica Rowe pulled into the lot. Clean-cut, efficient, the kind of leader who didn't need theatrics. Talk to me, she told Boone. Officer Brant detained General Dawson without probable cause. Ignored ID. Witnesses recorded everything. She turned to Brant. Did you check the ID? I wasn't sure it was real. You mean you didn't like how he looked? Silence. She turned to Caleb. I'm deeply sorry, General. I'm not here for apologies, Caleb replied. I just like to go home. And he did. But not before Boone filmed a quick statement. Calm, clear, direct. I witnessed Officer Lucas Brant detain Major General Caleb Dawson without cause. The incident appeared to be driven by bias, not protocol. The video hit social media that evening. By midnight, WRL had run it. By morning, it was national. The footage Dawson's composed stance, the cuffs, Boone's calm intervention was dissected by news anchors, reposted by veterans groups, and picked up by civil rights attorneys. The story exploded. It didn't take long before Officer Brandt's personnel file surfaced leaked from Flagler County, Florida, where he had previously served. 37 pages. Excessive force complaints. 2 investigations. A quiet resignation, not a termination. Hope Mills PD hadn't read the fine print. Now, they had no choice. On Monday, District Attorney Selena Carter issued a press release. After reviewing footage, statements, and records, our office is pursuing charges against Officer Brandt for unlawful detention and obstruction of justice. Brandt was arrested and booked, released on bond. No press statements. No apologies. Caleb never celebrated, never commented. He didn't need to. He returned to the VA center, to his coffee shop, to the men and women who called him sir, not out of protocol, but out of earned trust. He did speak once quietly at a gathering of veterans the following Friday. I didn't plan on being the face of anything, he said. But what happened at that gas station, it wasn't about me. It was about how quickly perception replaces truth. 1 second, I was a citizen. The next, a suspect. The room was silent. I was lucky. Someone was there. Someone pressed record. That shouldn't be what saves us. But right now it is. Across town, Deputy Boone started leading workshops on bias and authority for regional officers. The first sessions were met with eye rolls. One officer walked out, but others stayed, asked questions, thought deeper. One young officer approached Boone afterward. I probably would have done what Brandt did, he admitted. I didn't know who General Dawson was. Would you have asked for ID? Boone asked. Yeah. Then maybe you wouldn't have. The story didn't end with charges or statements. It continued in classrooms, in family dinners, in internal conversations across police departments. At Hope Mills High, a civics teacher used the video to open a discussion on authority and assumptions. A student said his father had been pulled over 6 times in 2 months. Another, that her uncle, a veteran, still got followed in stores. Back at the diner on Ramsey Street, someone taped a photo of Caleb in uniform near the register. No chin, none needed. 3 weeks later, the headlines faded, but the memory didn't. One morning, Caleb stood in front of an ROTC class. A cadet raised a hand. How do you stay calm when someone comes at you sideways? Caleb smiled faintly. You remember who you are before they try to define you. That line stayed with them. Just like the image of a man who stood tall not because he had stars on his collar, but because he never needed them to prove his worth. And maybe that was the lesson. Not in the punishment, not in the viral moment, but in the quiet reminder: dignity doesn't shout. It stands.